Dr. Zexhai pressed her crystalline hand against the cold metal surface and felt the vibrations travel through her body. The metal was old, very old. Older than anything she had ever discovered in her 30 years as a xenoarchaeologist. Her team of researchers stood behind her in the dim underground chamber, their breathing apparatus making soft hissing sounds in the thin air of Kepler 442b. "Professor, look at this," called out her assistant Nordan. The young Veltar held up a scanner that was beeping frantically. "The readings are off the scale. This metal contains elements that we don't even have names for." Zexhai walked over to examine the readings. Her crystalline body caught the light from their portable illumination units and cast rainbow patterns on the ancient walls. As a member of the Veltar species, she was tall and elegant, her body made of living crystal that could process information faster than most organic brains. This ability made her perfect for archaeological work, as she could analyze and catalog artifacts at incredible speeds. But what she was seeing now made no sense. "This can't be right," she said, studying the scanner. "According to these readings, this structure is over 50,000 years old." The other members of her team gathered around. There was Kexmore, a hulking Braxi warrior who served as their security specialist, his forearms crossed in confusion. Next to him stood Dr. Fentai, a delicate whisper whose gossamer wings fluttered nervously. The whispers were known throughout the galaxy for their ability to sense emotions and thoughts, and Dr. Fentai looked deeply disturbed. "Something is very wrong here," Dr. Fentai said in her musical voice. "I can feel echoes, old emotions, trapped in these walls. Fear, anger, and something else. Something that makes my wings ache." Zexhai nodded and turned back to the wall. They had been exploring this dead world for 3 weeks now. Kepler 442b had once been a beautiful planet, according to their orbital surveys. It had water, breathable atmosphere, and perfect conditions for life. But something had happened here long ago. The surface was covered in a layer of nuclear glass, twisted metal, and the remains of what looked like massive battles. The team had been sent by the Galactic Council to investigate after long-range sensors detected artificial structures beneath. The devastation. What they found was unlike anything in their databases. "Nordan, start taking detailed scans of these symbols," Zexhai ordered, pointing to strange markings carved into the walls. The symbols were simple but somehow disturbing. They looked like they had been made by creatures with 5-digit hands, but no known species in the galaxy had exactly that configuration. As Nordan worked, Zexhai continued exploring the chamber. It was clearly some kind of storage facility, with rows of empty containers lining the walls. But what had been stored here? And more importantly, who had built this place? "Professor," Kexmore's deep voice echoed through the chamber. "You need to see this." The security specialist was standing near what looked like a doorway, but instead of leading to another room, the doorway had been sealed with some kind of metal that gleamed, despite its age. Carved into the metal were more symbols, but these were different, larger, more urgent. Zexhai approached and ran her scanners over the sealed door. "It's some kind of warning," she said after a moment. "See these patterns? They're repeated over and over, like someone was trying very hard to make sure this message was understood." "Can you translate it?" Dr. Fentai asked, floating closer on her gossamer wings. "Not yet, but I'm getting fragments. Something about danger and—" Zexhai paused, her crystalline body flickering as she processed the information. "The word Terran keeps appearing." "Terran?" Nordan looked up from his work. "I've never heard of that species, neither had anyone else on the team. In all their years of study, across all the databases of the Galactic Council, there was no record of any species called Terrans." They spent the next several hours exploring the underground facility. Room after room revealed more mysteries. There were what looked like weapons, but designed for creatures much smaller than most galactic species. There were vehicles built for beings about 2 meters tall. And everywhere there were more warnings. As they worked, Dr. Fentai became increasingly agitated. "The emotions here are getting stronger," she reported. "It's like they're burned into the very walls. I can feel..." Desperation. Someone was very afraid when they built this place. On the second day of exploring the facility, they made their most disturbing discovery yet. Deep in the lowest levels, they found a chamber that had clearly been some kind of laboratory. But this wasn't a normal research facility. The equipment was designed for genetic work, and the computers that still functioned contained data that made SCI-FI's crystalline structure dim with shock. "These are genetic templates," she announced to her team. "Thousands of them, for dozens of different species." "What kind of genetic templates?" Kexmore asked, his warrior instincts making him suspicious. SCI-FI studied the data more carefully. "Weapons. These are genetic weapons, designed to target specific species with incredible precision. Plagues that would kill only Braxi, viruses that would dissolve Veltar crystal structures, biological agents that would ground whispers permanently." The team stood in shocked silence. Genetic warfare was banned throughout the galaxy. It was considered the ultimate crime against life itself. Yet here was evidence of genetic weapons more advanced than anything in current galactic arsenals. "Who were these Terrans?" Dr. Fentai whispered. Their answer came on the third day, when they finally managed to access the facility's central computer system. The artificial intelligence was old beyond measure, but still functional. When they activated it, a holographic display flickered to life, showing the image of a strange creature. It was bipedal, like many galactic species, but shorter than most. It had pale skin, dark hair, and most unsettling of all, forward-facing eyes. Predator eyes. The creature's mouth moved, and after a moment the computer's translation systems managed to convert the sounds into understandable language. "If you are seeing this message, then you have found one of our emergency caches," the creature said. Its voice was calm, but there was something in its tone that made Kexmore's 4 hands instinctively reach for his weapons. "We are the Terrans, also called humans. If you are not human, then you should leave this place immediately and warn your people." The hologram continued. "We tried to live in peace with the other species of the galaxy. We offered our knowledge, our friendship, our aid, but they feared us. They said we were too dangerous, too aggressive, too willing to fight. They said we bred too fast and adapted too quickly. They said we were a threat to galactic peace." SCI-FI felt her crystalline body growing cold as she listened. "So we made a choice. Rather than fight a war that would consume the galaxy, we agreed to exile. We gathered our people and left for the spaces between galaxies. But before we went, we prepared. We built caches like this one. We developed weapons that could protect us if we ever needed to return. And we left warnings." The hologram gestured and new images appeared. Star charts, weapon specifications, and most chilling of all, detailed files on every major species in the galaxy, including weaknesses, population centers, and military capabilities. "We hope we never have to use this information," the human continued. "We hope that by leaving we allowed the galaxy to find the peace it claimed to want. But if you are here, if you are accessing these files, then perhaps that peace was not meant to be." The message ended, and the team stood in stunned silence. Finally, Nordon spoke. "Professor, we need to report this immediately." SCI-FI nodded, but her mind was racing. If these humans had been exiled 50,000 years ago, where were they now? Were they still alive in the void between galaxies? And if so, what had they been doing all this time? Over the next few days, the team worked frantically to catalog everything they had found. The weapons cache was enormous. There were devices that could crack planets, ships designed for long-term survival in deep space, and most disturbing of all, detailed plans for what looked like a return to the galaxy. But it was Dr. Fentai who made the most frightening discovery of all. "Professor," she said on their final day on the planet, "I've been sensing something ever since we arrived. At first I thought it was just echoes from the past, but now I'm certain. We're being watched." "Watched by whom?" SCI-FI asked. Dr. Fentai pointed toward the ceiling. "Something up there. Something that's been observing us since we arrived. And, Professor, I think it's been transmitting." SCI-FI felt her crystalline structure go cold. If something had been watching them, reporting their discovery to someone else, then their find might not be as secret as they thought. As they prepared to leave Kepler 442b, SCI-FI took one last look at the ancient facility. The warnings carved into the walls seemed more ominous now. Quarantine zone. Approach at your own peril. Birth world of the Terrans. These weren't just warnings about a dead civilization. They were warnings about something that might still be very much alive. During the journey back to Council Space, SCI-FI spent her time studying the data they had recovered. The more she learned about the humans, the more disturbed she became. They weren't just another spacefaring species. They were survivors, adapters, warriors who had somehow become so dangerous that the entire galaxy had united to force them into exile. But if they had left willingly 50,000 years ago to preserve peace, what would make them return? The answer came as their ship approached the Council Station. Long-range sensors detected something that made the entire crew go silent with fear. A massive object was approaching from the direction of intergalactic space. It was moving slowly, deliberately, and according to their scanners, it was artificial. It was also heading directly for inhabited space. As SCI-FI watched the object on their screens, she realized that their archaeological expedition had been much more than a simple dig. They had found evidence of humanity's exile. And now, after 50,000 years, it seemed the humans were coming home. The question was no longer who the Terrans were. The question was what they wanted, and whether the galaxy was ready for their return. Based on what SCI-FI had learned in the ruins of their homeworld, she very much doubted it. The forgotten, dangerous ancient race was about to become very much unforgotten, and the galaxy was about to remember why they had feared humans in the first place. News of Dr. SCI-Fi's discovery spread through the Galactic Council like wildfire. Within days, every major species was demanding access to her findings. Emergency sessions were called. Ancient archives were opened for the first time in centuries, and slowly, terrifyingly, the pieces of a puzzle that had been scattered across time began to come together. The first breakthrough came from the Kethmori, the galaxy's oldest surviving civilization. Their massive library worlds contained records, dating back nearly 100,000 years, stored in crystalline matrices that could preserve information indefinitely. When Dr. SCI-Fi's report reached them, the Kethmori archivists began searching through their deepest, most restricted files. What they found made their tentacles writhe with ancient fear. Keeper Yulmoth was one of the oldest Kethmori alive, his massive bulk barely fitting through the corridors of the Grand Archive. His species looked like enormous jellyfish, floating through their cities on anti-gravity fields, their translucent bodies pulsing with bioluminescent thoughts. Yulmoth had spent 3,000 years studying the forgotten periods of galactic history, but even he had never ventured into the files marked with the ancient symbol for extinction event. Now he had no choice. The first reference was subtle, buried in a trade report from 47,000 years ago. A mention of the Burning Ones who had appeared in the outer systems, offering advanced technology in exchange for raw materials. The report noted that these beings were small but fierce, with an unusual ability to survive in environments that would kill most other species. But it was the next reference that made Yulmoth's bioluminescence flicker with alarm. A military report from 45,000 years ago described a conflict in the Rigel sector. A mining dispute had escalated into violence when the Burning Ones refused to abandon an asteroid belt they claimed contained resources they needed. The report described the ensuing battle in terms that seemed impossible. The Burning Ones fight with a fury that defies understanding, the ancient Kethmori commander had written. They do not retreat when injured. They do not surrender when outnumbered. They adapt their tactics faster than our computers can process. We destroyed 17 of their ships, yet they celebrated each loss as if it brought them closer to victory. Their final transmission before withdrawing was not a surrender but a promise. We will remember this. Yulmoth searched deeper into the archives. More reports surfaced. The Burning Ones had appeared in dozens of systems, always offering trade first but always ready for war if trade failed. They seemed to learn from every encounter, growing stronger and more dangerous with each conflict. But the most disturbing reports came from the psychological analysis files. Kethmori mind healers who had studied captured burning ones described a species unlike anything they had encountered. They possess an emotional intensity that borders on insanity, one report stated. They form bonds with their companions that are stronger than life itself. They will die for strangers if those strangers are part of their pack. Most disturbing of all, they seem to find joy in conflict, not the satisfaction of victory, but actual pleasure in the struggle itself. As Yulmuth compiled his findings, similar discoveries were being made across the galaxy. The drift singers, nomadic beings who traveled between stars in great fleets, began consulting their oral traditions. These songs and stories, passed down through 100,000 years of wandering, contained references to the Death Walkers. Singer. Volandra was ancient even by drift singer standards. Her people lived for millennia, their gaseous bodies sustained by the cosmic radiation between stars. She floated in the center of her ship's song chamber, surrounded by younger singers who helped her access the deepest memories of their race. The songs about the Death Walkers were some of the oldest in their tradition, and they were sung only in whispers, with harmonies that made the listeners' spirits tremble. They came from a small world circling a yellow star, Volandra sang, her voice echoing through the chamber. Small beings, but they burned with life fire. They walked in the void without fear. They bred faster than the seasons. They changed themselves to survive any world, any climate, any poison. The other drift singers joined in the ancient harmony, their voices weaving together the story that had been passed down for 50,000 years. The Death Walkers would not bow, they sang. The Death Walkers would not break. They fought until their bodies failed, then fought as spirits. They turned other races into warriors like themselves, just by being near them. Even the peaceful became violent in their presence. But it was the ending of the song that chilled Volandra's ancient heart. The Death Walkers agreed to sleep in the dark between stars. But they did not agree to die. They promised to return when the galaxy had learned the price of peace. They promised to wake when their children called to them from the darkness. As these ancient stories surfaced, modern archaeologists across the galaxy began finding physical evidence to support them. On 17 different worlds, excavation teams uncovered blast patterns from weapons that shouldn't have existed 50,000 years ago. The energy signatures were unlike anything in current galactic arsenals, but they all shared certain characteristics. They were designed to cause maximum damage with minimum energy expenditure, and they showed evidence of rapid technological evolution. Dr. Shenka, a brilliant young Nexari scientist, was studying one such site on the world of Broken Chain. The Nexari were a machine race, their consciousness uploaded into robotic bodies that could be continuously upgraded. This made them excellent at pattern recognition and data analysis. "Look at this," Shenka transmitted to her research team, her robotic voice carrying undertones of digital concern. "These weapon impacts show a progression. The earliest blasts are crude, primitive, but as the battle continued, the weapon signatures evolved. The attackers were learning and adapting their technology in real time during the middle of combat." Her analysis of the battlefield revealed something even more disturbing. The combatants had faced an army of multiple species working together. But the battle hadn't ended with the defeat of the smaller force. Instead, the larger army had apparently retreated, leaving behind evidence of massive casualties. "The genetic analysis is the most troubling part," Shenka reported to the Galactic Council. "We found biological remains from dozens of species, scattered across this battlefield, but they all died from identical causes, precise strikes to vital organs, using weapons that seemed to know exactly where each species' weaknesses were. But the most shocking discovery came from the genetic analysis itself. Mixed in with the remains of the various galactic species, the team found traces of DNA that matched no known life form. When they compared it to the genetic templates Dr. Zexhai had found on Kepler 4142b, the match was perfect. Human DNA. And it wasn't just present on the battlefield, it was mixed with the DNA of other species in ways that suggested extensive interbreeding. They didn't just fight other species. Shenka concluded in her report. They integrated with them, formed relationships, had children with them. The humans weren't just conquerors or traders. They were becoming part of the galactic community. This discovery led to a galaxy-wide genetic survey that produced results no one was prepared for. Trace amounts of human genetic markers were found in the DNA of virtually every major species. It was subtle, often buried deep in non-coding regions, but it was there. The implications were staggering. At some point in the distant past, humans had not only interacted with other galactic species, they had become part of their genetic heritage. Every race in the galaxy carried some small fragment of human DNA. As scientists struggled to understand how this was possible, historians began uncovering the political context of the human exile. Ancient treaty documents, locked away in the deepest vaults of the Galactic Council, told a different story than the one preserved in legend. Counselor Mextai, an elderly Trilari whose species served as the galaxy's diplomats, was granted access to these restricted files. The Trilari were natural empaths and negotiators, their multiple brains allowing them to see conflicts from numerous perspectives simultaneously. What Mextai found in the ancient records made all three of his brains ache with horror. The humans hadn't been violent conquerors. They had been refugees. According to the documents, the human homeworld had been dying. Their star was becoming unstable, and they had needed to evacuate their entire species. They had approached the Galactic Council peacefully, asking for assistance and offering to share their advanced survival technologies in exchange for new homes. But their request had been denied. Not because of resource limitations or political concerns, but because of fear. The other species had been terrified of human adaptability and reproductive rates. They were afraid that humans would outcompete them for resources and territory. The humans demonstrated an ability to modify their own genetics to survive in any environment, one ancient report stated. They showed no signs of population control instincts. They formed emotional bonds that extended beyond their own species. Council projections indicated that within 1,000 years, humans would either dominate the galaxy through integration or destroy it through competition for resources. The final documents revealed the truth of the Great Exile. The galactic species had united not to drive humans away, but to contain them. They had offered the humans a choice: accept permanent exile to the void between galaxies, or face complete extinction. The humans had chosen exile, but they had negotiated terms. They would leave the galaxy peacefully, taking with them only what they could carry in their ships. In exchange, they demanded the right to leave monitoring stations and emergency caches throughout galactic space. They also demanded that any genetic offspring from human-alien relationships be allowed to remain and integrate with their non-human parent species. Most chilling of all, they had negotiated a return clause. If any galactic species ever attempted to expand beyond their current borders, if any species began exhibiting the same survival traits that had made humans dangerous, or if the galaxy ever faced an extinction-level threat it could not handle alone, the humans retained the right to return. As Counselor Mextai read the final document, his three brains all focused on the same terrifying realization. According to their own records, the galaxy had been expanding aggressively for the past 10,000 years. Multiple species had developed genetic modification technologies, and most recently, the Keth Mori had detected signals from outside the galaxy that suggested a massive alien invasion force was approaching from dark space. By the terms of the ancient treaty, the humans had every right to return. More than that, the galaxy might actually need them. The question was no longer whether the humans were coming back. The question was whether the galaxy was ready to honor a 50,000-year-old agreement, or whether they would try to stop the return of the species they had spent half a century trying to forget. As emergency sessions convened and ancient weapons were dusted off, one fact became increasingly clear. The galaxy was about to face the consequences of its oldest decision. The forgotten, dangerous ancient race was about to become unforgotten, and this time, they had 50,000 years of exile to motivate them. Captain Morden had been surveying the outer spiral for 15 years, and he thought he had seen everything the universe had to offer. His ship, the Harmony's Edge, was one of the newest vessels in the Galactic Survey fleet, equipped with sensors that could detect a single molecule of organic matter across light years of space. His crew was handpicked from the best officers in the galaxy, specialists in everything from stellar cartography to xenobiology. But as he stared at the readings on his main display, Mordun felt something he rarely experienced. Genuine fear. "Captain, are you seeing this?" asked Lieutenant Vectar, his navigation officer. The young Braxy's forearms were dancing across his control panels, trying to make sense of the data flooding their sensors. "Long-range scanners are picking up something massive in the void between our galaxy and Andromeda." Mordun nodded slowly, his tentacles adjusting the controls to get a clearer picture. As a member of the Kef species, he was naturally calm and methodical, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the bridge lights in soothing patterns. But now those patterns were flickering with uncertainty. "Distance?" he asked. "Approximately 50,000 light-years from the galactic rim," reported Ensign Talwi from the sensor station. The delicate whisper's gossamer wings were trembling, which usually meant she was detecting strong emotions from somewhere nearby. But there was nothing nearby except empty space. "That's impossible," said Dr. Silana, the ship's xenobiologist. She floated over to the main display, her floater species' natural buoyancy making her movements graceful despite her obvious agitation. "There's nothing in that region of space. No stars, no planets, no sources of energy. How could something massive be surviving out there?" Captain Mordun was wondering the same thing. The void between galaxies was exactly that, void. No resources, no energy sources, no way for any civilization to survive for more than a few generations at most. "Take us closer," he ordered. "But keep us at maximum sensor range. I want to know what we're dealing with before we commit to anything." The Harmony's Edge changed course, its advanced engines pushing them toward the mysterious object at near-light speed. As they traveled, the object gradually resolved into something that defied all their expectations. It was a ship, but not like any ship in their databases. The vessel was enormous, easily 20 kilometers long and 5 kilometers wide. Its hull was dark metal, scarred by what looked like millions of years of micrometeor impacts. Strange spines and antenna arrays jutted from its surface at irregular intervals. Most disturbing of all, it was clearly artificial, but the design followed no known architectural principles. "Captain," Dr. Silana reported from her science station, "I'm detecting power signatures from inside that ship. It's not dead. Something is still active in there." "Life signs?" Mordun asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "Thousands of them, but they're strange. Very low metabolic activity, almost like they're in some kind of suspended animation." "Ensign." Talwi suddenly gasped, her wings fluttering with extreme agitation. "Captain, I'm sensing something from that ship. Emotions, but they're wrong. They're too strong, too intense, and they're dreaming. Whatever's in there is still conscious, even in hibernation." Mordun felt his exoskeleton darken with concern. He had been trained to deal with derelict vessels, but this was clearly something beyond normal protocol. "Send a message to Galactic Command. Priority Alpha. Tell them we found something that requires immediate consultation." But before they could transmit, their communications officer intercepted an incoming priority message. "Captain, we're receiving an emergency transmission from the Galactic Council. All survey vessels are ordered to report any unusual findings, immediately, especially any objects of unknown origin in intergalactic space." Mordun's tentacles curled with suspicion. "When was that order issued?" 3 days ago, sir." The same day Dr. Zexhi returned from Kepler 442b. The timing was too convenient to be coincidental. Whatever Dr. Zexhi had found on that dead world, it was connected to the mysterious ship floating in the void. "Dr. Silana, I want a complete analysis of that vessel," Mordun ordered. "Compare its design to everything in our databases. Look for any connection to known civilizations, extinct or otherwise." The xenobiologist worked for several hours, her multiple limbs manipulating a dozen different analytical instruments simultaneously. Finally, she looked up with an expression of profound confusion. "Captain, this doesn't match any known architecture. But there are some similarities to the ruins Dr. SCI-FI found. The proportions, the layout, even some of the materials. I think this might be a Terran vessel." The bridge fell silent. Everyone had heard about Dr. SCI-FI's discovery by now. The mysterious humans, the ancient exile, the warnings left behind on their homeworld. If this was indeed a human ship, it meant they had survived 50,000 years in the void between galaxies. "Sir," Lieutenant Vector said quietly, "our sensors are detecting movement inside the ship. Whatever hibernation system they're using, I think it's starting to activate." Before Morden could respond, their communications array lit up with an incoming transmission. But this wasn't coming from Galactic Command. It was coming from the ancient ship. The main screen flickered, and a voice filled the bridge. It was speaking in an unknown language, but their universal translators managed to provide a rough conversion. "Unknown vessel, this is the generation ship New Horizon. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." Morden exchanged glances with his crew. The voice sounded calm, professional, but there was something underneath it. An edge of caution that suggested these beings were ready for trouble. "This is Captain Morden of the Galactic Survey Vessel Harmony's Edge," he responded. "We detected your ship on long-range sensors and came to investigate. Are you in need of assistance?" There was a long pause before the response came. "Captain Morden, our records indicate that the Kef species was not space-capable when we last had contact with galactic civilization. How long have we been in hibernation?" The question sent a chill through Morden's exoskeleton. "According to our historical records, your species left the galaxy approximately 50,000 years ago." Another pause, this one even longer. When the voice returned, it carried a weight of sadness that made Ensign Talwi's wings droop with sympathy. 50,000 years. We had hoped it would be less." The voice paused again, and when it continued, it was all business. "Captain, I am Colonel Sarah Chen, commanding officer of this vessel. I am going to send over a small shuttle to make direct contact. I hope you will allow this." Morden considered his options. Protocol demanded that he request instructions from Galactic Command before making contact with unknown species. But these weren't exactly unknown, were they? And if the humans had survived 50,000 years in the void, they might have information that could be valuable to the galaxy. "Permission granted, Colonel Chen, but I must warn you that your arrival will be reported to the Galactic Council." "I would expect nothing less," came the reply. "We will be with you shortly." 20 minutes later, a small craft detached from the massive generation ship and approached the Harmony's Edge. The shuttle was unlike anything in their databases, sleek, efficient, but with an aggressive design that suggested it could serve as a fighter if necessary. As the shuttle docked with their ship, Morden gathered his senior staff in the main cargo bay. Dr. Silana had prepared basic medical scanners, while Security Chief Rekmal had stationed armed guards at strategic positions. They didn't know what to expect from these ancient humans, but they were prepared for anything. The shuttle's airlock hissed open and 3 figures emerged. The first was clearly Colonel Chen. She was tall for a human, about average height for most galactic species, with dark hair and those distinctive forward-facing predator eyes. She wore a simple uniform that looked both practical and military in design. But what struck Morden most was her bearing. She moved with the confidence of someone who had commanded others for a very long time. Behind her came 2 other humans. One was a shorter male with graying hair and hands that looked like they had spent decades working with delicate machinery. The other was a tall female with pale skin and eyes that seemed to take in every detail of their surroundings. "Captain Morden," Colonel Chen said, stepping forward with her hand extended in what their cultural database identified as a human greeting gesture. "Thank you for allowing us aboard your ship. I am Sarah Chen, and these are Dr. Marcus Webb, our chief, scientist, and Commander Lisa Torres, my second in command." Morden extended one of his tentacles to complete the greeting. Noting how the humans adapted immediately to his alien physiology, without showing any signs of discomfort or revulsion. Colonel Chen, I must admit we are all very curious about your people. According to our records, humans were exiled from the galaxy 50,000 years ago. How did you survive in the void for so long? Dr. Webb stepped forward. We adapted, Captain. It's what humans do best. We developed closed-loop life support systems, genetic modification techniques to help us survive in artificial environments, and most importantly, we learned patience. 50,000 years is a very long time to be patient, Dr. Solana observed. Commander. Torres smiled, but it wasn't entirely pleasant. Not all of us were awake for the entire journey. We developed hibernation technology that allowed us to sleep for decades at a time, with only a skeleton crew maintaining the ships. We've been taking turns being conscious, generation after generation. Ships? Lieutenant Vector asked. You have more than one? Colonel Chen nodded. The New Horizon is the flagship of a small fleet. 12 ships in total carrying about 50,000 humans. We are what remains of our species. The number sent a shock through Mordune's system. 50,000 individuals didn't seem like much, but if they had managed to survive and maintain their technology for 50 millennia, they represented a significant force. Colonel, Mordun said carefully, I must ask what your intentions are. Are you planning to return to the galaxy? The three humans exchanged glances, and Mordun noticed a subtle communication passing between them. These people had worked together for so long that they could coordinate without words. That depends, Captain, Colonel Chen said finally. We left the galaxy because we were told we were too dangerous to coexist with other species. We've spent 50,000 years learning to control those aspects of our nature that frightened others. We've developed technologies that could benefit everyone. We've gained wisdom that comes only from surviving in the harshest environment imaginable. She paused, and her expression grew more serious. But we've also been monitoring galactic communications during our exile. We know about the expansion wars. We know about the genetic modification projects. We know about the signals from dark space that suggest a massive invasion force is approaching. Dr. Solana's multiple limbs trembled with shock. The information about the dark space signals was highly classified. How could the humans know about it? Colonel Chen noticed her reaction. We've had 50,000 years to develop very sophisticated listening devices, Doctor. We know more about current galactic politics than most council members do. And based on what we've learned, we think the galaxy might need our help. Help? Mordun asked. The species that drove us into exile did so because they said we were too dangerous, Commander Torres explained. But danger is sometimes exactly what you need when facing a threat that conventional methods can't handle. Dr. Webb activated a small holographic projector, filling the cargo bay with images of technology that made the galactic officers gasp in amazement. Advanced weapons, ships that could travel between galaxies, genetic modification techniques that could adapt beings to any environment. We didn't spend 50,000 years standing still, he said quietly. We used our exile to become everything the galaxy feared we might become. The question is whether the galaxy is finally ready to accept the help it refused so long ago. Colonel Chen stepped forward again. Captain Mordun, we're going to return to galactic space whether the Council approves or not. Our ancestral treaty gives us that right, and frankly, we don't trust the current leadership to handle the crisis that's coming, but we'd prefer to return as allies rather than conquerors. The words sent a chill through everyone present. These humans weren't asking for permission to return. They were informing the galaxy of their intentions. As the meeting continued, Mordun realized that everything was about to change. The forgotten dangerous ancient race was no longer forgotten. They had returned with technology that dwarfed anything the galaxy possessed, knowledge that spanned 50 millennia, and most frightening of all, they had returned with nothing left to lose. The galaxy was about to rediscover why they had feared humans in the first place. And this time, there would be no exile to save them. The accident happened 3 days after the first contact between the Harmony's Edge and the human fleet. Junior Technician Pel Wayne was a young Nexari, his mechanical body barely 2 centuries old. He had volunteered for the Joint Research Project, eager to study human technology up close. The humans had been surprisingly cooperative, allowing small teams of galactic scientists to examine their systems while they prepared for their return to inhabited space. Pelwayne was supposed to be scanning the external hull of the New Horizon. Instead, curiosity got the better of him, and he began examining what looked like a control interface near one of the ship's many airlocks. The symbols were unlike anything in his database, but some of them seemed familiar. He thought he could figure out their meaning. He was wrong. His electronic probe triggered something deep in the ship's systems. Lights that had been dim for decades suddenly blazed to life. Alarms began sounding in frequencies that hurt the ears of everyone within a kilometer. And most importantly, the ship's central hibernation system began initiating an emergency revival sequence. "What did you do?" demanded Dr. Silana, rushing to the young Nixari's side as warnings flashed across displays throughout the human vessel. "I don't know," Pelwayne transmitted, his mechanical voice carrying overtones of panic. "I was just trying to understand the interface. I didn't mean to activate anything." But it was too late. Throughout the massive generation ship, thousands of hibernation pods were opening. Humans who had been sleeping for decades were awakening to emergency lights and blaring alarms. And according to the ship's systems, they were awakening to the knowledge that unknown aliens were aboard their vessel. Colonel Chen arrived at the interface within minutes, still wearing the simple coveralls she had been sleeping in when the alarms woke her. But despite having just emerged from hibernation, her eyes were sharp and alert. She examined the controls, then looked at the gathered aliens with an expression that was carefully neutral. "Accidental activation of Emergency Protocol 7, she announced. "Full crew revival is in progress. All personnel will be conscious within the next 6 hours." Captain Mordoon felt his exoskeleton flush with embarrassment. "Colonel, I apologize for my technician's actions. Is there any way to halt the revival process?" Colonel Chen shook her head. "Not without risking the lives of everyone still in hibernation. Besides, perhaps it's for the best. We were going to wake everyone eventually. This just accelerates our timeline." As they spoke, more humans began appearing in the corridors. They moved with purpose and discipline, but their eyes carried the hardness of people who had lived through unimaginable hardship. These weren't the desperate refugees who had fled the galaxy 50,000 years ago. These were survivors, shaped by millennia of life in the void. Dr. Marcus Webb appeared at Colonel Chen's side, fully dressed and alert despite having been in hibernation just hours earlier. "Sarah, the other ships are reporting similar activations. It seems the emergency protocols are networked across the entire fleet." "How many?" Chen asked. "All of them. 50,000 humans will be awake within the day." The news hit the gathered aliens like a physical blow. 50,000 humans armed with technology that made their own ships look like toys, awakening simultaneously, in the void between galaxies. But it was Commander Torres who delivered the news that changed everything. "Colonel," she said, approaching with a portable scanner in her hands, "you need to see this. Long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements throughout galactic space. Every major species is mobilizing their military forces." Dr. Silana's multiple limbs went limp with shock. They wouldn't. The Council wouldn't authorize military action without proof of hostile intent. Colonel Chen looked at the readings on Torres's scanner and her expression grew cold. "Dr. Silana, I'm afraid your Council has already made its decision. According to these readings, there are over 10,000 warships moving toward the galactic rim. They're not coming to welcome us home." Captain Mordoon felt his world tilting beneath him. "This is madness. You've shown no hostile intent. You've been completely cooperative." "Captain," Colonel Chen said gently, "we've been through this before. 50,000 years ago, fear made the galaxy's decisions for it. It appears that hasn't changed." As the situation developed, communications began flooding in from across the galaxy. Dr. Zexhi's discovery had triggered a panic that was spreading faster than the news of human cooperation. Ancient fears were awakening alongside ancient treaties. Species that had lived in peace for millennia were suddenly remembering why their ancestors had united to exile humanity. The first shots weren't fired by humans. Captain Vexicarn of the Braxy battlecruiser Ironclaw had been stationed at the Galactic Rim as part of the Rapid Response Fleet. When his sensors detected the approaching human vessels, his forearms began working his weapons controls before his brain could process what he was seeing. The humans had emerged from hibernation aboard their generation ship, but they had also launched smaller vessels, sleek, fast ships that moved through space with an efficiency that spoke of 50,000 years of technological advancement. They weren't approaching threateningly, but their mere existence was threat enough for Captain Vexicarn. "All ships, this is Ironclaw," he broadcast to his fleet. "Unknown vessels have entered galactic space. They are not responding to our challenges." It was a lie. The humans had responded to every challenge with calm professionalism, identifying themselves and stating their peaceful intentions. But fear had clouded Vexicarn's judgment. "Engaging hostile forces," he announced, and opened fire. The human ships didn't immediately return fire. Instead, they scattered with an agility that made the Braxy captain's eyes widen in shock. Their evasive maneuvers were unlike anything in galactic tactical databases. They moved like living things, anticipating attacks before they were launched. But when they did return fire, the effect was devastating. The human weapons didn't destroy the Braxy ships. Instead, they disabled them with surgical precision. Shield generators failed. Weapon systems shut down. Life support remained intact, but every offensive capability was neutralized within minutes. "Ironclaw to Galactic Command," Captain Vexicarn transmitted, his voice tight with humiliation. "We have engaged the human vessels. Our entire fleet has been disabled. Repeat, we are combat ineffective, but alive. The humans could have destroyed us, but they chose not to." The news of the engagement spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The humans were back. They were more advanced than ever, and most surprisingly, they were showing restraint even when attacked, but not everyone saw restraint as a positive sign. Admiral Keithvan, Supreme Commander of the Veltar Crystalline Fleet, was one of the oldest military officers in the galaxy. His crystalline body had been shaped by centuries of warfare, and his tactical mind was considered one of the best in known space. When he received news of the Ironclaw incident, his first thought wasn't relief that the humans had shown mercy. His first thought was that they were playing a game. "They're being careful," he announced to his staff aboard the flagship Shard of Justice. "They know we're watching, so they're trying to appear peaceful. But mark my words, this is the same species that nearly conquered the galaxy before. They haven't changed. They've just gotten better at hiding their true nature." Admiral Keithvan began implementing what he called defensive measures. The Veltar fleet began deploying weapon platforms at strategic points throughout their space. Other species, taking their cue from the crystalline beings, began similar preparations. Meanwhile, the humans continued their approach to inhabited space, sending diplomatic messages and offering technological exchanges. But for every message they sent, the galaxy's military forces grew larger and more paranoid. The breaking point came when a human ship approached the world of New Harmony, a peaceful planet inhabited by the Whisper species. The humans had requested permission to land, offering to share their knowledge of long-term survival technologies. The Whispers, natural empaths, could sense no hostile intentions from the approaching vessel. But the Galactic Defense Force had stationed a battalion of war mechs on New Harmony just in case. When the human ship began its descent, the battalion commander panicked and ordered the mechs to fire. The human ship was destroyed instantly, along with its crew of 12 diplomats. The response was immediate and terrible. Within hours, human ships appeared throughout the galaxy. Not the slow, peaceful vessels they had been sending before, but sleek warships that moved through space like angry predators. They struck at military targets with precision that seemed impossible, disabling defensive systems faster than anyone could react. But they didn't kill. Even in their fury, the humans maintained surgical restraint. They destroyed weapons and disabled ships, but they went to extraordinary lengths to preserve life. It was as if they were fighting a war while simultaneously trying to minimize casualties. This restraint only made them more terrifying. Colonel Chen appeared on every major communications network simultaneously, her image broadcast to every inhabited world in the galaxy. She looked tired, sad, but absolutely determined. "People of the galaxy," she began, 50,000 years ago, your ancestors exiled us because they said we were too dangerous to coexist with other species. We accepted that judgment and left peacefully, hoping that time would prove them wrong." She paused, and her expression grew harder. "We returned offering friendship, knowledge, and aid. We were met with military mobilization and attacks on our diplomatic vessels. It seems that fear still rules your decisions." The broadcast continued across all channels, impossible to block or interrupt. "We did not want this war. We tried to prevent it. But since you have chosen to treat us as enemies, we will show you what enemies we can be. We have spent 50,000 years preparing for the possibility that we might need to defend ourselves. We have developed technologies that your militaries cannot comprehend. We have become everything you feared we might become." Colonel Chen leaned forward, her predator eyes staring directly into the camera. "But we will not become the monsters you believe us to be. We will disable your weapons, neutralize your fleets, and occupy your worlds if necessary. But we will not commit genocide. We will not destroy civilizations. We will prove that we are better than your fears, even if we must do it by force." The broadcast ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. Within days, human forces had neutralized every major military installation in galactic space. Their ships appeared everywhere at once, striking with coordination that seemed impossible. They knew exactly where to hit, exactly what would disable enemy forces without causing mass casualties. But the most shocking discovery came when galactic intelligence services realized how the humans were achieving such perfect coordination. They weren't just using advanced communications. They were using the genetic markers they had left behind 50,000 years ago. Every major species in the galaxy carried trace amounts of human DNA, and somehow the humans were using that connection to predict their enemies' actions. The galaxy had been infiltrated at the genetic level for 50 millennia, and no one had realized it until now. As human forces consolidated their control over galactic space, a terrible realization began to dawn on the defenders. This wasn't a war. This was a demonstration. The humans were showing the galaxy exactly how outmatched they were, how completely they could be defeated if the humans chose to stop holding back. The forgotten, dangerous ancient race had returned, and they were proving that they had indeed become everything the galaxy had feared. The only question now was whether they would choose to be conquerors or liberators. But as Colonel Chen had promised, they were determined to be better than their enemies' expectations, even if it meant conquering the galaxy to prove it. The war that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. It wasn't the brutal, prolonged conflict that historians had expected. Instead, it was a series of precisely executed operations that left galactic military forces feeling more like students being taught a harsh lesson than soldiers fighting for their lives. Human forces didn't occupy planets in the traditional sense. They arrived, disabled all military installations, established communication hubs, and then began broadcasting. What they broadcast changed everything. Dr. SCI-FI was on the Veltar homeworld when the humans arrived. She watched from her laboratory as sleek human ships descended through the crystalline cities like silver drops of rain. No weapons fired, no buildings were destroyed. Instead, the ships landed in public squares and parks, and humans emerged carrying data cores and portable displays. "Citizens of Veltar Prime," the announcement came in perfect Veltar linguistic patterns. "We are humans. We have returned to the galaxy after 50,000 years of exile. We come not as conquerors, but as bearers of truth. We invite you to learn what your leaders have hidden from you for 50 millennia." The first revelation came within hours. The humans had spent their exile not just surviving but investigating. They had developed technologies that could analyze genetic patterns across space and time, reconstruct historical events from trace evidence, and most disturbing of all, recover deleted data from quantum storage systems that everyone believed were impossible to hack. What they revealed about galactic history made Dr. SCI-FI's crystalline structure dim with horror. The humans, displayed evidence of 17 different species that had been systematically exterminated over the past 40,000 years, not by natural disasters or genetic plagues, but by deliberate actions of the Galactic Council's inner circle. Species that had shown signs of rapid technological advancement, high reproductive rates, or aggressive expansion had simply disappeared. From the records, the Kina were a peaceful species that developed faster than light travel independently, the human presenter explained to the gathered crowd. They were wiped out by an engineered plague 38,000 years ago. The official records claim they died of natural causes. We have genetic evidence proving otherwise. Image after image followed. The Vorth, who had developed advanced genetic modification. The Hessen, who had begun expanding beyond their home system too quickly. The Quen, who had asked too many questions about galactic history. All extinct. All eliminated by the same coalition that had exiled humanity. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Your leaders didn't exile us because we were dangerous, Colonel Chen announced during a galaxy-wide broadcast. They exiled us because we discovered what they were doing. We found evidence of their systematic elimination of potential competitors. We refused to remain silent about their crimes. The evidence was overwhelming. Hidden facilities were extinct. Species were studied and cataloged like trophies. Genetic weapons designed to target specific DNA patterns. Most damning of all, recordings of council sessions where the elimination of problematic species was discussed in clinical, bureaucratic language. Dr. Zexhai felt her world crumbling as she realized the truth. Her own people, the supposedly peaceful Veltar, had been instrumental in developing the genetic weapons used to commit genocide. Their advanced crystalline minds had been perfect for designing precision biological warfare. But the humans weren't finished. We spent 50,000 years in exile gathering evidence, Colonel Chen continued, but we also spent that time preparing for our return, not to conquer, but to ensure that these crimes could never happen again. The final revelation came when the humans activated technologies they had been secretly placing throughout the galaxy for millennia. The monitoring stations Dr. Zexhai had found on Kepler 442b were just the beginning. Using the genetic markers present in every galactic species, the humans had been observing, recording, and documenting everything that happened in their absence. They had proof of every corrupt council decision, every covered-up atrocity, every species that had been eliminated to maintain the status quo. And they had names. Specific individuals who had participated in genocide across thousands of years. The galaxy's response split along generational lines. Younger species, those who had evolved to sapience in the past 20,000 years, had no memory of the ancient fear of humanity. To them, the humans were liberators, bringing truth to light and offering advanced technologies that could solve resource shortages and extend lifespans. Dr. Silana, the floater xenobiologist from the Harmony's Edge, found herself leading a group of younger scientists who were eager to work with human researchers. They're not the monsters our ancestors described, she argued during heated council debates. They're the only species in the galaxy with the courage to expose the truth about our history. But the older species, those whose civilizations stretched back 50,000 years or more, remembered why they had feared humanity. And that fear was now mixed with the terror of exposure. Admiral Kaithvan of the Veltar fleet made one last desperate attempt to eliminate the human threat. He gathered the most advanced warships from 12 different species and launched a coordinated attack on the human fleet, still stationed at the galactic rim. The battle lasted 6 minutes. Human ships didn't just defeat the combined fleet, they absorbed it. Weapons that should have destroyed human vessels instead seemed to make them stronger. Shield technologies were copied and improved in real time. Battle tactics were analyzed and countered before they could be fully implemented. But, most shocking of all, the humans captured every enemy ship intact with full crews alive and unharmed. This is what we became during our exile, Colonel Chen explained as she broadcast from the bridge of Admiral Kaithvan's captured flagship. We didn't just develop better weapons or faster ships. We became a species that learns from every encounter, that adapts to every threat, that grows stronger with every challenge. She gestured to the Veltar admiral, who sat in his command chair looking decades older than he had that morning. Admiral Kethvan has served his people faithfully for centuries. He believed he was protecting the galaxy from a terrible threat. He was wrong, but his dedication to his people's safety is admirable. This is why we will not execute him or his crews. This is why we will not commit the same crimes that were committed against other species. The broadcast continued with Colonel Chen addressing the camera directly. We are not here to conquer. We are not here to rule. We are here to ensure that the systematic elimination of species ends forever. We are here to build a galaxy where every form of life can flourish without fear of being erased, because they become too successful or too curious. But the most powerful moment came when the humans began revealing the genetic connections they had discovered during their exile. Every species in this galaxy carries traces of human DNA, Dr. Marcus Webb announced during a scientific symposium broadcast across all inhabited worlds. We didn't just trade with your ancestors 50,000 years ago. We formed families with them. We became part of your genetic heritage. He activated a holographic display showing the genetic maps of dozens of species. The Braxi carry human genetic markers that enhance their tactical thinking. The Whispers have human DNA that strengthens their empathic abilities. The Veltar carry human genes that improve their computational processing. The implications were staggering. The traits that made each species unique, the abilities they were most proud of, had been enhanced by human genetic contributions 50,000 years ago. We are not aliens returning to claim territory, Dr. Webb continued. We are family coming home to find that our relatives have forgotten who we are. The revelation changed everything. Young beings across the galaxy began demanding genetic testing to confirm their human heritage. Protests erupted on worlds where governments had participated in the ancient crimes. New political movements formed, dedicated to establishing relations with humanity and learning from their advanced technologies. But the most significant change came from an unexpected source. Ensign Talwi, the young Whisper from the Harmony's Edge, had been studying the emotional patterns she detected from human minds. What she discovered challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about human nature. They're not more aggressive than other species, she reported during a joint human-galactic scientific conference. They're more committed. When humans form bonds with family, friends, or even abstract concepts like justice, those bonds become part of their identity. They don't fight because they enjoy violence. They fight because they cannot abandon their commitments. Her analysis revealed that human aggression was actually an extreme form of loyalty and dedication. They fought so fiercely because they were incapable of betraying their principles or abandoning their responsibilities. This understanding led to the most important development of all. The younger species began to realize that the humans weren't trying to conquer them. They were trying to protect them from the same fate that had befallen the 17 extinct species. The final confrontation came not on a battlefield, but in the halls of the Galactic Council itself. Colonel Chen walked into the ancient chamber where decisions affecting trillions of beings were made. She was accompanied by representatives from 43 different species, most of them young civilizations that had chosen to stand with humanity. The Old Guard was there too. Keeper Yulmoth of the Kethmori, Admiral Kethvan of the Veltar, and dozens of other leaders whose civilization stretched back to the era of human exile. 50,000 years ago you exiled us because you said we were too dangerous to coexist with other species. Colonel Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the massive chamber. You were right. We were dangerous. We were dangerous. To your plans to eliminate competition. We were dangerous to your system of secret genocides. We were dangerous to your ability to erase inconvenient truths from history. She gestured to the mixed crowd of beings filling the chamber. But we were not dangerous to the galaxy itself. We were only dangerous to those who would harm it. The vote that followed was closer than anyone expected. The older species, despite overwhelming evidence of their crimes, were reluctant to acknowledge human sovereignty or accept human oversight of galactic affairs. But the younger species, supported by their own populations who had learned the truth about galactic history, voted overwhelmingly to establish a new form of government. The Galactic Council would continue to exist, but it would be balanced by a human oversight committee with the power to investigate and prevent future genocides. More importantly, any species showing signs of rapid advancement or expansion would be protected rather than eliminated. The new treaty was signed on the anniversary of the first human exile, 50,000 years after their ancestors had been forced to leave their home galaxy. But the signing took place not on an ancient council world, but on New Terra, a planet on the edge of galactic space that the humans had claimed as their new home. Colonel Chen stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above New Terra, watching as ships from dozens of species arrived to establish embassies and research facilities. The young Whisper Talwi floated beside her, her gossamer wings shimmering in the light of the system's twin suns. "Do you think it will work?" Talwi asked. "This new arrangement?" Sarah Chen smiled, and for the first time since awakening from hibernation, the expression reached her eyes. "I think it has to work. We've shown the galaxy what happens when fear makes its decisions. Now we get to show them what's possible when species work together instead of eliminating each other." She pointed to a group of mixed species research teams visible through the station's transparent walls. Humans worked alongside Braxi warriors, Veltar crystalline beings, and floater scientists, sharing knowledge that had been hoarded for millennia. Tuidim spent 50,000 years learning how to survive in the void, she continued. Now we get to spend the next 50,000 years learning how to build something better than survival. We get to build a galaxy where no species has to fear extinction for being too successful. As she spoke, a message arrived from the deep space monitoring stations. The signals from dark space, the ones that had suggested a massive invasion force, had changed. The unknown entities were no longer approaching. Instead, they were retreating, as if they had detected something in the galaxy that made them reconsider their plans. Perhaps they had sensed the awakening of a species that had turned 50,000 years of exile into 50,000 years of preparation. Perhaps they had detected the unity of civilizations that had learned to work together instead of eliminating each other. Or perhaps they had simply recognized the return of humanity, a species that had proven they would rather leave the galaxy than destroy it but would fight to the death to protect it. The forgotten, dangerous ancient race was no longer forgotten. They were no longer ancient. And they were no longer the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. The most dangerous thing in the galaxy was now the alliance they had forged with species brave enough to stand with them. An alliance built not on conquest or domination, but on the simple principle that every form of life deserved the chance to flourish without fear. The humans had come home, and they had brought the future with them. The old cargo ship Dreadnought drifted through the darkness of space, its metal hull showing years of patches and repairs. Red warning beacons blinked around it, sending a clear message to all nearby ships. Danger, keep distance. Captain Tom. Mason sat in his worn captain's chair, boots up on the control panel. He was a man with rough hands and a face that told stories of many space journeys. His eyes were closed, but he wasn't sleeping. Tom could feel every small movement of his ship. "Captain, we're getting a signal," said Rob, the young communications officer. His fingers moved quickly over the glowing screens. "Unknown ship approaching from Sector 7. Tom opened one eye. "Human or other?" "Definitely not human," Rob answered. "Design matches nothing in our database." The captain sighed and put his feet down. The Dreadnought had been traveling peacefully for weeks, carrying mining equipment to the outer colonies. Now this. "Wake up the crew," Tom ordered, "and send out the warning message." In the distance, a shining vessel approached. Its smooth, curved hull was a stark contrast to the Dreadnought's rough appearance. Inside the alien ship, Commander Block stood tall, his purple skin reflecting the blue light of the command center. "What is that primitive vessel?" Blocks asked, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into standard language. "Unknown, Commander," answered Officer Triz, studying her screens. "It appears to be sending some kind of warning signal." Blocks looked at the message flashing across their screens. "Dangerous ship, do not approach, unstable systems." He made a sound like laughter. Primitive warning tactics. They hope to scare us away. Blocks turned to his crew of 10 officers. The Stellar Confederation claims all abandoned or distressed vessels. This ship looks perfect for study. But Commander, Triz said carefully, the ship is not abandoned. We detect life forms. Irrelevant, Blocks replied. Look at it. Such a primitive vessel clearly belongs to a species that has not yet reached proper space classification. We have a duty to bring it under Confederation control. Back on the Dreadnought, the crew gathered in the control room. There were only 6 of them: Tom, Rob, Engineer Jack, Security Officer Lisa, Navigator Ben, and Dr. Meg. They had worked together for years and knew the Dreadnought better than anyone. That ship is not responding to our warnings, Tom said, watching the alien vessel grow larger on the screen. Jack, an older man with grease-stained hands, shook his head. They don't understand what they're dealing with. Should we run? Ben asked, already plotting possible escape routes. Tom looked at his crew, then at the worn walls of his ship. The Dreadnought wasn't just a ship to them, it was home, and it had its own way of handling trouble. No, Tom decided. We stay. The ship stays. Send the warning one more time. On the alien vessel, Blocks ignored the repeated warnings. Prepare the boarding party. We will claim this vessel under Confederation salvage law. Commander, Triz tried again, those warning signals might be important. Our records show that humans mark certain ships as dangerous for specific reasons. Are you suggesting these humans know something we don't? Blocks asked, his skin darkening with irritation. The Confederation has explored thousands of worlds. We have encountered hundreds of species. What could these humans possibly know that would concern us? Triz looked down at her screens. I'm just suggesting caution, Commander. Your concern is noted, Block said dismissively. Now prepare the boarding team. The alien ship moved closer, extending a docking tube toward the Dreadnought. Tom and his crew watched on their screens. They're really going to do it, Lisa said, checking her weapon. Should I prepare for defense? Tom raised his hand. Not yet. Let's see what they want first. Jack looked up from his engineering panel. Tom, the ship is getting restless. Everyone on the crew knew what that meant. The Dreadnought wasn't like other ships. Years of repairs with experimental technology had given it certain quirks. Some systems acted almost with a mind of their own. Easy, old girl, Tom whispered, patting the control panel. Let's not overreact. The boarding tube connected with a loud clang. Moments later, 5 alien figures in sleek spacesuits entered the Dreadnought's main airlock. Interesting design, said one alien, scanning the walls with a small device. Very inefficient. Commander Blocks led the group. Find the control room. We need to secure this vessel quickly. As they moved through the corridor, the lights suddenly dimmed. The aliens activated their helmet lights. Poor maintenance, Blocks commented. Pitiful. The boarding party reached a junction where the corridor split in 3 directions. Strange layout, one alien noted. No logical design. Blocks checked his scanner. Life forms are this way, he said, pointing to the left. Corridor. The aliens moved forward, but after walking for several minutes, they found themselves back at the same junction. Impossible, Blocks said, checking his scanner again. We should have reached the control room. Commander, one alien said nervously, the corridor we just came through, and it's different now. They turned to see that the corridor behind them had indeed changed. The walls looked different, and the doors were in new positions. Some kind of holographic trickery, Blocks decided. These humans are more clever than they appear. Meanwhile, in the control room, Tom's crew watched the confused aliens on their screens. The ship doesn't like visitors, Jack said with a small smile. Should we talk to them? Rob asked. Explain the situation? Tom considered this. Open a channel. The aliens jumped when Tom's voice came through their helmet speakers. This is Captain Tom Mason of the cargo vessel Dreadnought. You are aboard a dangerous ship without permission. I suggest you return to your vessel immediately. Blox's pride wouldn't allow retreat. "This is Commander Blox of the Stellar Confederation. Your primitive vessel falls under our salvage jurisdiction. Surrender your control room." Tom sighed. "That's not how this works, Commander. The Dreadnought is classified as dangerous for a reason. It's not just a name." As if to prove his point, the gravity in the corridor suddenly reversed. The alien boarding party floated upward, crashing into the ceiling. "What is happening?" Blox demanded, trying to activate his magnetic boots. "The ship happens," Tom replied simply. "Last warning, leave now." The gravity returned to normal, dropping the aliens roughly to the floor. Blox got to his feet, his pride hurt worse than his body. "This is not over," he promised. "The Confederation will have this vessel." "Your choice," Tom said as the communication ended. The aliens retreated to their ship, their neat appearance now disheveled. As they disconnected the boarding tube, Blox stared at the crude human vessel. "Mark my words," he said to his crew. "That ship will be ours. No primitive humans can resist the might of the Stellar Confederation." Little did he know, it wasn't just the humans he needed to worry about. The Dreadnought itself had already decided it didn't like these new visitors, and the Dreadnought always got its way. Commander Blox stood before the large screen, his purple skin now a deep shade of anger. 3 high-ranking Confederation officials looked back at him from the screen, their expressions serious. "You retreated from a primitive vessel?" asked the center official, Admiral Vril. He was older than Blox, with gray skin and cold eyes. "It was a tactical withdrawal," Blox explained. "The human ship has unusual defenses. I need more resources to secure it properly." Admiral Vril looked at the images of the Dreadnought. This rusted bucket? What possible value could it have? "The humans have technology that can alter the physical structure of the ship," Blox said, "and they've classified it as dangerous in their system." This caught Vril's attention. "Dangerous? Interesting. Perhaps there is something valuable aboard after all." He turned to his colleagues. "I will handle this personally. Commander Blox, hold your position until my fleet arrives." As the communication ended, Blox smiled. Soon the primitive humans would learn the true power of the Stellar Confederation. On Earth, in the United Space Command headquarters, General Ward looked at the report from the Dreadnought with growing concern. "The Dreadnought encountered aliens?" she asked the young officer before her. "Yes, General. Captain Mason reports they tried to board under some kind of salvage claim." The general sighed. Of all the ships they could have picked, they chose a Class D dangerous vessel. She shook her head. "We need to establish communication with these aliens immediately. Explain our classification system before this gets worse." "We're trying, General, but they're not responding to standard diplomatic channels." General Ward stood and walked to the large window overlooking the busy spaceport. "Then send the message directly to Captain Mason. He needs to explain to these aliens exactly what they're dealing with." Back on the Dreadnought, Tom gathered his crew around the small dining table. Jack was tinkering with a small device as he listened. "We've got a message from Command," Tom said. "The aliens that tried to board us are from something called the Stellar Confederation. Apparently they're a big deal out here." "And they want our ship?" asked Lisa, cleaning her weapon. "They think dangerous means armed and valuable," Tom explained. "They don't understand our system." Engineer Jack looked up from his device. "Did you tell them about the ship's personality?" "I tried," Tom said. "They didn't listen." The Dreadnought's personality was well known among human space travelers. Years ago, the ship had been part of an experimental program using adaptive systems. Most ships in the program were decommissioned when they began to show signs of unpredictable behavior. But the Dreadnought had been different. Its quirks were manageable with the right crew. "Command wants us to try explaining the dangerous ship classification again," Tom continued. "Make them understand why they should keep their distance." Rob, who was monitoring communication, suddenly straightened in his chair. "Captain, multiple ships just appeared on long-range scanners. Big ones." Tom moved quickly to the control room, the others following. On the main screen, they could see 5 large alien vessels approaching. "Well," Tom said quietly, Looks like they brought friends. Admiral Vril stood proudly on the bridge of his flagship, the Conqueror. 4 battle cruisers followed behind, forming an impressive fleet. "Commander Blocks, report," Vril ordered as his ship approached the dreadnought. Blocks appeared on screen. "Admiral, the human vessel remains in position. They have made no attempt to flee." "Of course not," Vril said with confidence. "They know resistance is pointless." Officer Triz spoke up from her station. "Admiral, we're receiving a message from the human ship." "Put it through," Vril ordered, curious what the humans would say. Tom's face appeared on the screen. He looked calm despite the 5 warships facing his small cargo vessel. "This is Captain Tom Mason of the Dreadnought. I need to explain something important about our ship." Vril smiled coldly. "This is Admiral Vril of the Stellar Confederation. You will surrender your vessel for inspection." Tom shook his head. "Admiral, you're not understanding. The Dreadnought is classified as a dangerous ship. This isn't a threat. It's a warning for your safety." "A touching concern," Vril said, "but unnecessary. Your primitive warnings do not frighten us." "It's not about fear," Tom tried again. "In human space, ships are classified based on their stability. Class A ships are normal. Class B have minor quirks. Class C need special handling. Class D ships like the Dreadnought have developed, let's call them, unique properties." Vril's patience was wearing thin. "Enough stalling. What valuable technology? Are you hiding?" Tom sighed. "We're not hiding technology. The ship itself is the issue. It's semi-sentient and highly unpredictable. Even to us." This made Vril pause. "You claim your vessel is alive?" "Not exactly alive," Tom explained. "But not entirely mechanical either. The Dreadnought has developed its own patterns and behaviors, over time. It reacts to threats in ways we can't always predict." Vril looked at his officers, who seemed uncertain. Then he laughed. "A clever story, human, but the Confederation has encountered many species with many excuses." He turned to his tactical officer. "Prepare boarding parties, 3 teams heavily armed." "Admiral," Triz said quietly, "what if the human is telling the truth? Perhaps we should investigate these claims before—" "Are you questioning my orders?" Vril snapped. Triz lowered her eyes. "No, Admiral." Tom's voice came through again. "Admiral, I strongly advise against this action. The Dreadnought doesn't respond well to threats." "Your concern is noted," Vril said, using the same dismissive tone Blocks had used earlier. "But this vessel will be under Confederation control within the hour." As the communication ended, Tom turned to his crew. "Well, we tried." "What now, Captain?" asked Ben. Tom looked around at the worn walls of the control room. "Now we let the Dreadnought decide how to handle our visitors." Engineer Jack frowned. "The ship has been getting more aware lately. This could get ugly." "I know," Tom said, "but they've made their choice." On the Conqueror, Admiral Vril watched as his boarding shuttles approached the Dreadnought. Unlike Blocks's small team, Vril had sent 30 soldiers in 3 groups. "Boarding teams report they're approaching the airlocks," reported the tactical officer. Vril smiled. "Excellent. Soon we'll discover what secrets this dangerous ship holds." Officer Triz monitored her screens carefully. Something about the human captain's warning had troubled her. He hadn't seemed scared or defensive. He had seemed concerned for them. "Admiral," she said suddenly, "I'm detecting unusual energy fluctuations from the human vessel." Vril waved his hand dismissively. "Likely just their attempts to resist boarding." Triz wasn't convinced. "The patterns are strange, not like weapons or shields." On her screen, the Dreadnought seemed to shimmer slightly, as if the metal itself was somehow shifting. "First team has docked and is entering the airlock," announced the tactical officer. Vril leaned forward in his chair, eager to see what his soldiers would find. The Confederation would add another ship to its collection, and if the humans resisted, they would learn the price of defiance. What Vril didn't realize was that the real challenge wasn't the human crew at all. It was the ship itself. and it was just getting started. The first team of alien soldiers moved carefully through the dreadnought's main airlock. There were 10 of them, each carrying advanced weapons and scanning devices. Their leader, Officer Crag, had been specially chosen by Admiral Vril for this mission. "Stay alert," Crag told his team. "The humans may have traps." The airlock door closed behind them with a heavy thud. The aliens looked around at the old metal walls and dim lighting. "Primitive design," one soldier commented, running a scanner over the wall. "Their technology is at least 100 years behind ours." Crag checked his map device. "Control room should be 2 levels up. Team 2 will secure the engine room. Team 3 will find the crew." The aliens moved forward, their boots making metallic sounds on the floor. They reached a junction where the corridor split into 3 paths. According to Commander Blox's report, this is where they encountered some kind of illusion technology. Crag said, "Be prepared for tricks." As if on cue, the lights in the corridor suddenly brightened, then dimmed again. The aliens raised their weapons. "Just poor power systems," Crag said, though he didn't sound convinced. They took the left path, which should lead to a stairway up to the control room. After walking for about a minute, they found themselves facing a solid wall. "This doesn't match our scans," said one confused soldier. Crag touched his communication device. "Team 2, Team 3 report positions." "Team 2 here," came the reply. "We're trying to reach the engine room, but the corridors keep changing." "Team 3, we've found what looks like crew quarters, but no humans." Crag frowned. "Stay on. Mission. The humans must be using some kind of holographic technology to confuse us." Just then, a voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was Tom. "I tried to warn you," he said calmly. "The dreadnought doesn't like uninvited guests." Crag pointed his weapon at the ceiling. "Show yourself, human." "I'm in the control room," Tom replied. "But that's not important right now. What's important is that you understand what's happening. The ship is responding to what it sees as a threat." As if to prove his point, the floor beneath the aliens suddenly tilted sharply. 3 soldiers lost their balance and slid down the now sloping corridor. "What is this?" Crag demanded, holding onto a pipe on the wall. "That's the dreadnought," Tom explained. "It can modify its internal structure. Not everywhere and not all the time, but enough to be problematic for invaders." The floor leveled out again, but now the corridor looked completely different. The 3 paths had become 2, and the wall colors had changed. In the control room, Tom and his crew watched the confused aliens on their screens. Jack was at his engineering station, his hands moving quickly over the controls. "The ship's getting creative," Jack said with a hint of worry. "I've never seen it change configurations this fast before." "Can you control it?" Tom asked. Jack shook his head. "You know I can't. Not when it's like this. I'm just trying to make sure life support stays stable." On another screen, they could see Team 2 having their own problems. The engine room door kept moving. Every time they approached it, the door would appear 10 feet further down the corridor. Team 3 had found themselves in a section where gravity seemed to work differently, in different spots. One soldier was walking on the ceiling while another was stuck to a wall. "Should we help them?" asked Dr. Meg, who had been quiet until now. Tom considered this. "They came here to take our ship by force, but I don't want anyone getting hurt." He activated the communication system again. "Admiral Vril, your teams are in danger. Call them back now." On the Conqueror, Admiral Vril watched with growing anger as his elite soldiers stumbled around like lost children. "This is some kind of trick," he insisted. "The humans must have advanced technology hidden in that rust bucket." Officer Triz studied her readings carefully. "Admiral, I'm detecting unusual energy patterns throughout the human ship. It's as if the internal structure really is changing." "Impossible," Vril snapped. "No ship can reconfigure itself that way." But the evidence on the screens was hard to ignore. "Team leaders report," Vril commanded. Crag's voice came through, sounding stressed. "Admiral, we're encountering difficulties. The ship's internal layout doesn't match our scans. Corridors change when we're not looking at them. And there are areas where gravity and even temperature seem to be controlled independently. Push forward, Vril ordered. Find the control center that manages these effects. We're trying, Admiral, but Craig's voice cut off as a loud metallic groan came through the communication. On the screens, Vril watched as a section of wall suddenly folded inward, separating Craig from half his team. At the same time, Team 2 reported that they were now somehow back at the airlock they had entered through, despite walking away from it for 20 minutes. Team 3 was in the worst position. They had found what appeared to be a storage room, but the door had sealed behind them. Now the room was slowly filling with a thick fog. "It's not toxic," reported Team 3's leader. "Just some kind of mist, but we can't see anything." Back on the Dreadnought, Engineer Jack looked concerned as he studied his monitors. "Tom," he said quietly, "the ship is starting to access systems it's never touched before. It's activating the old experimental drive." This was serious news. The Dreadnought had been fitted with an experimental faster-than-light drive years ago. The drive had never worked properly, which was one reason the ship had been classified as dangerous. "Can you shut it down?" Tom asked. "I'm trying," Jack replied, his fingers flying over the controls. "But you know how it is. When the ship decides to do something." Tom nodded grimly. The Dreadnought had its own ways of handling things. That's why they needed a special crew, people who understood the ship's quirks and could work with them, rather than against them. "What will the drive do?" asked Lisa. Jack shook his head. "Hard to say. It never worked right. It could just make a lot of noise and light. Or it could try to jump." "Jump where?" Rob asked nervously. "That's the problem," Jack said. "Could be anywhere." Tom made a decision. "Open a channel to Vril again, last warning." Admiral Vril was about to order a fourth team to board when Tom's face appeared on his screen again. "Admiral, you need to withdraw your people now," Tom said urgently. "The ship is activating its experimental drive." "More tricks?" Vril asked, though his confidence was wavering. "No tricks," Tom insisted. "The Dreadnought has an unstable FTL drive. That's part of why it's classified as dangerous. When it activates, we don't know exactly what will happen." As if on cue, Officer Triz called out, "Admiral, energy readings from the human ship are off the charts. Something is powering up in their engine section." Vril hesitated. His teams were making no progress, and now this new development. "If that drive activates," Tom continued, "it could drag your ship with it. The Dreadnought creates unusual space distortions when the drive runs." For the first time, Vril felt a flicker of doubt. What if the humans were telling the truth? What if this ship really was dangerous not because of weapons but because it was unpredictable? Outside, the Dreadnought began to glow with a strange blue light. The light pulsed slowly at first, then faster. "Admiral," Triz said urgently, "whatever is happening on that ship is affecting local space. Our sensors show distortions forming." Vril made his decision. "Recall all boarding teams immediately. Prepare to move our ships to a safe distance." As the alien soldiers hurriedly retreated to their shuttles, the Dreadnought's glow intensified. The experimental drive was waking, up after years of dormancy, and nobody, not even its crew, knew exactly what would happen next. The blue glow around the Dreadnought grew brighter. Admiral Vril's fleet had moved back to what they hoped was a safe distance. The last boarding team had barely escaped before the strange energy field expanded. "What is happening to that ship?" Vril demanded, watching the screens from the safety of his command chair. Officer Triz studied her readings with growing concern. "The energy signature doesn't match anything in our database. It's creating some kind of bubble in space around itself." Vril's fleet watched as the Dreadnought pulsed with energy. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the glow faded. The ship returned to its normal worn appearance. "Is it over?" Vril asked cautiously. Before Triz could answer, a new ship appeared near the Dreadnought. This vessel was sleek and clearly of advanced design, though smaller than Vril's warships. It moved smoothly into position between the Dreadnought and the alien fleet. "Admiral," Triz reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the new vessel." "Put it through," Vril ordered. A human face appeared on screen. The woman was older, with short gray hair and a formal uniform decorated with symbols of rank. "This is Diplomat Trill of the United Earth Space Command," she said in a calm voice. "I understand there has been a misunderstanding regarding one of our vessels." Vril straightened in his chair. "This is Admiral Vril of the Stellar Confederation. That vessel falls under our salvage rights." Trill smiled patiently. "Admiral, no human ship falls under Confederation salvage rights. We are not part of your Confederation, and we have our own laws regarding ship classifications and ownership." "The ship was demonstrating hostile actions," Vril insisted. "The ship was defending itself," Trill corrected. "As it was designed to do. I believe Captain Mason attempted to warn you about the nature of dangerous class vessels." Vril said nothing, his pride still stinging from the failed boarding attempts. Trill continued. "I propose a meeting to discuss this situation properly. Perhaps you would join me aboard the dreadnought itself. It would help you understand what you're dealing with." "You expect me to board that unpredictable vessel?" Vril asked in disbelief. "It's perfectly safe when approached correctly," Trill assured him. "I will accompany you personally." After a moment of consideration, Vril nodded. "Very well. But I will bring guards." "One guard only," Trill countered. "Too many unfamiliar presences can upset the ship." Vril didn't like being dictated terms, but his curiosity about the strange vessel outweighed his pride. "Agreed." An hour later, Diplomat Trill escorted Vril and one guard onto the dreadnought. Tom met them at the airlock. "Captain Mason," Trill greeted him warmly. "Thank you for hosting this meeting." Tom nodded. "The ship has settled down. It should be fine now." Vril looked around suspiciously. The corridor looked ordinary, old and worn, but not threatening. "Your ship no longer changes its structure? It does what it needs to do when it needs to do it," Tom explained. "Right now it doesn't feel threatened." They walked to a small meeting room where the rest of the dreadnought's crew waited. Engineer Jack was still checking readings on a portable device. "Is the drive stable?" Tom asked him quietly. Jack nodded. "For now. It didn't fully activate, just powered up enough to send out a distress signal." He glanced at Vril. "The ship knew we needed help." Vril overheard this. "You speak as if this vessel is alive." "Not alive exactly," Jack said, "but not entirely mechanical either." Trill gestured for everyone to sit at the table. "Admiral, let me explain our ship classification system. It may help you understand why your approach was problematic." She activated a small projector that displayed a simple chart. "Humans classify our ships into categories based on predictability and stability. Class A ships are standard vessels that operate exactly as designed. Class B ships have minor quirks but follow standard protocols. Class C ships require specialized crews due to more significant anomalies." She pointed to the chart. "Class D ships like the Dreadnought are what we call dangerous, not because they're weapons but because they're unpredictable even to their crews." Vril frowned. "Why would anyone use such unreliable vessels?" "Because they have unique capabilities," Tom explained. "The Dreadnought can adapt to situations in ways no standard ship can. It develops solutions we wouldn't think of." Jack added, "Years ago, this ship was part of an experiment using adaptive systems. Most ships from that program were decommissioned when they started showing signs of independent behavior. But a few, like the Dreadnought, proved valuable despite their quirks." "Or because of them," Lisa commented. Trill nodded. "Instead of fighting against these anomalies, we learned to work with them. Special crews who understand how to collaborate with their vessels." "Collaborate with a machine?" Vril found the concept strange. "Think of it as working with a very unusual partner," Tom suggested. "The Dreadnought has its own ways of doing things. We don't always understand why it makes certain choices, but we've learned to trust its instincts." Engineer Jack opened a panel in the wall, showing Vril the strange mixture of standard and experimental technology inside. "See these connections here? We didn't design them this way. The ship modified itself over time, finding more efficient pathways. Vril leaned closer, his scientific curiosity overcoming his skepticism. Fascinating, self-modifying systems. But dangerous. Exactly why we mark them as such, Trill said. The warning beacons around the dreadnought weren't there to protect the ship. They were there to protect anyone who might approach it. Tom looked directly at Vril. When you ignored those warnings and tried to take the ship by force, it responded the way it's learned to respond to threats. It defended itself. And its crew, added Lisa. Vril was beginning to understand. These dangerous ships. How many do humans have? Not many, Trill answered. Perhaps 50 throughout human space, each one unique, each with its own peculiarities. We give them wide berth, follow strict protocols when interacting with them, and rely on specialized crews like Captain Mason's to manage them. The lights in the room flickered briefly, as if the ship was responding to being discussed. It's listening to us right now, isn't it? Vril asked quietly. Tom nodded. In its way, yes. The dreadnought is always aware. For the first time, Vril looked around the old ship with something approaching respect rather than disdain. I have underestimated both your species and your technology, it seems. A common mistake, Trill said with a small smile. Many assume that because our ships don't all have sleek designs and perfect systems, they must be primitive. The truth, Tom added, is that some ships, like the Dreadnought, are advanced in ways that aren't immediately obvious. They've evolved beyond their original programming. Before Vril could respond, his communication device activated. Commander Blox's voice came through, sounding urgent. Admiral, we've detected multiple human vessels entering the system. At least 20 ships, including what appear to be warships. Vril looked at Trill sharply. You called for reinforcements? Not reinforcements, Trill corrected calmly. The Dreadnought's distress signal automatically alerted our defense fleet. Standard protocol for dangerous class vessels in potential conflict situations. Tom stood up. We should check on this. As they moved quickly to the control room, Vril began to understand the true meaning of the warning he had ignored. Dangerous ships are not safe. Not because they would attack, but because they were unpredictable, adaptive, and connected to a civilization that understood and protected them. And he had just provoked both the ship and its civilization by trying to claim what wasn't his to take. The control room of the Dreadnought buzzed with activity. Tom and his crew monitored screens showing both the approaching human fleet and the nervous Confederation ships. Admiral Vril stood beside Diplomat Trill, watching it all with growing concern. 23 human vessels detected, reported Rob from his communication station. Captain Green of the Guardian is requesting an update on our situation. Tom opened a channel. Guardian, this is Dreadnought. We have a diplomatic situation under control. Please maintain distance but stay alert. On the main screen, they could see the human fleet taking up defensive positions. The ships were a mix of designs, some sleek and new, others as weathered as the Dreadnought, but all moved with practiced precision. Your response fleet arrived quickly, Vril noted. Dangerous ships get priority, Trill explained. When one sends a distress signal, we respond immediately and in force. Vril's communication device activated again. Admiral, came Commander Blox's voice. The human fleet has our vessels surrounded. Should we prepare for combat? Before Vril could answer, another voice cut in, deep and authoritative. This is Fleet Commander Davis of the Earth Space Command. Confederation vessels, power down your weapon systems immediately. Any hostile action will be met with appropriate response. Vril looked at Trill. Your ships are threatening mine. Your ships tried to forcibly board one of ours, Trill reminded him calmly. But we're not looking for conflict. We're looking for understanding. Tom turned from his control panel. Admiral, you have a choice to make. This can end peacefully with new knowledge shared, or it can escalate into something neither side wants. The ship's lights dimmed slightly, then brightened again. Engineer Jack looked up from his station. The ship's processing something, he said quietly to Tom. power fluctuations in the main systems. Tom nodded. The dreadnought was paying attention to the conversation in its own way. Vril considered his options. His pride urged him to stand firm to show the strength of the Confederation, but his intellect told him that would be a mistake. These humans and their strange ships were not what he had assumed. "What do you propose?" he finally asked Trill. "Formal recognition of human ship classifications by the Confederation," she replied promptly, "especially regarding dangerous class vessels, and an agreement to respect our warning beacons in the future. And in return, we share information about our ship classification system, knowledge that could benefit both our peoples." Vril nodded slowly. "I will need to consult with Confederation leadership." "Of course," Trill agreed. "In the meantime, I suggest you recall Commander Blocks and move your fleet to a respectful distance." As Vril began giving orders to his fleet, Tom felt a strange vibration through the floor. The control panels flickered and several displays changed without anyone touching them. "Jack," Tom said with concern, "what's the ship doing?" The engineer studied his readings with growing alarm. "It's activating systems all over the vessel, power levels rising." He looked up. "I think it's still feeling threatened." Trill noticed their concern. "Is something wrong?" "The dreadnought doesn't seem convinced the danger is over," Tom explained. "It's still in defense mode." Vril overheard this. "But I've agreed to withdraw." "The ship doesn't understand words," Jack said. "It understands actions." Suddenly, all the screens in the control room changed. They showed images from around the dreadnought: corridors, storage rooms, the engine room. In several locations, small devices had been left behind by the Confederation boarding teams. "Are those—" Tom began. "Monitoring devices," Vril admitted, reluctantly. "Standard procedure during boarding operations." Tom looked at him with disappointment. "You plant spy devices while talking peace?" The ship shuddered and the blue glow began to appear around its hull again. "The dreadnought found your devices," Jack said, "and it doesn't like them." Alarm signals sounded throughout the ship. The experimental drive was powering up again, stronger this time. "What's happening?" demanded Vril. "The ship is defending itself," Tom replied. "It detected your spy devices and considers them a continuing threat." He turned to Jack. "Can you stop the drive activation?" Jack shook his head. "Not when it's like this," Trill faced Vril. "Admiral, you need to recall all your spy devices immediately. The ship will interpret that as a sign of good faith." Vril hesitated only briefly before activating his communicator. "Commander Blocks, send the recall signal to all monitoring devices placed on the human vessel. Immediate priority." "But Admiral—" Blocks began to protest. "Now, Commander," Vril ordered. Within moments, the small devices throughout the dreadnought began to power down. Some ejected themselves from where they had been hidden, floating in the air as if offering themselves to be collected. The ship's vibrations slowly stopped. The blue glow faded. The alarm signals quieted. "It worked," Jack said with relief. "The ship is standing down." Tom looked at Vril. "Now we can talk honestly. No tricks, no hidden devices. Just open communication." Vril nodded, a new respect in his eyes. "I begin to understand why you classify these vessels as you do. They are indeed unpredictable, but valuable allies when treated with respect," Trill added. 3 days later, Tom stood with his crew in the dreadnought's cargo bay. The diplomatic meetings had gone well. Representatives from both the human government and the Stellar Confederation had worked out preliminary agreements for future interactions. Diplomat Trill approached them, holding an official-looking document. "It's done," she announced. "The Confederation has formally recognized our ship classification system. They've agreed to respect all warning beacons and to establish proper diplomatic channels before approaching any human vessels." "And the dreadnought?" Tom asked. "Officially, recognized as a sovereign entity under human protection," Trill said with a smile. "The first ship to receive such status from the Confederation. Admiral Vril, who had stayed to finalize the agreements, joined them." Your vessel has taught the Confederation a valuable lesson, Captain Mason, one we will not forget. What lesson is that? Asked Lisa. That advanced technology doesn't always look advanced, Vril replied, and that warnings should be heeded, not dismissed. As if appreciating the compliment, the lights in the cargo bay brightened momentarily. The ship likes you better now, Jack commented to Vril. Vril looked up at the ceiling. The feeling is becoming mutual. Before departing, the Confederation ships transmitted a new regulation to all their vessels throughout space. It appeared on the Dreadnought's main screen for all to see. Regulation 72903. The only rule aliens should never break. Dangerous ships are not safe. Below this title was a detailed explanation of human ship classifications and proper protocols for encountering vessels with warning beacons. As Vril's shuttle departed, Tom patted the worn wall of his ship. Well done, old girl. You've just helped create the first intergalactic ship safety regulation. The Dreadnought hummed softly in response, its systems settling into normal patterns, until the next time someone ignored its warnings. Because while rules could be written and agreements signed, the Dreadnought knew a simple truth. Some lessons had to be learned the hard way, and it would always be ready to teach those lessons to anyone who didn't respect the most important rule in space. Dangerous. Ships are not safe.